G'day scrappers. Thought today I'd start a new series of videos called Scrap Sessions. Basically scrapping out stuff and just going through all the things that I pick up from street scrapping. And so once I unload it out of the van, I've had quite a few people ask me to process the stuff that I actually pick up. So here I've got 4 tubs that I emptied out of the van from yesterday's street scrap. And so yeah, thought I'd see how this video series goes. Maybe it'll be of interest and just a little bit of fun. Always pick up your DVDs and a couple of PCs. I wanted to have a look at one of the PCs because it might be a good gaming one. And just pretty much go through the boxes and pretty much how I do it every week after my street scrapping. So here's my little stool that I picked up. You might have seen that in the previous video. I picked these stools up. It's not the best condition. They were all a little bit damaged on the actual chair part, but this one seemed to work. So I just like to sit down sometimes rather than standing up and fiddling around with scrap all the time. I like to sit down, so I just got that there. My old one got worn out, so I threw that out and scrap. And when this one you know, if something goes wrong with it, I'll just throw it straight into scrap metal. So okay, so time to go through some of this stuff. And this first box, I'm gonna go just have a look at a few things. One of the things I picked up was this Elna sewing machine. It's a bit of a vintage sewing machine. So all I want to do here is just make sure that, see if it actually works. If it does work, it might be just something that I like to keep aside. There are a lot of weird vintage collectors out there, and they need old things like this for various things. Could be for movie props or just for their own personal use. And because this one is an Elna, it's precision made in Switzerland, so Swiss made sewing machine. You know, if anything's going to be worth keeping, you know, I mean, it's a bit out of my league as far as what I like to keep, but just because it's small, I'll just keep it aside. And it's got the cords, and probably, you know, most importantly, still got the original foot pedal. So if it didn't have the cords, I wouldn't worry about it. But so I'll just plug it in, and okay, all right. Well, it's got a light. Now we'll just see if it works. Yep. Various, I don't know what all these functions mean. There we go. Nice. So it works. If it didn't work, I wouldn't bother keeping it because, you know, depending on who would want this, someone that's into sewing machines, I doubt I'll ever find someone that's into sewing machines, but they would want it to work. So perfect. Okay, so there we go. Elna sewing machine, good old vintage. You know, like I said, because it's made in Switzerland, it's a good quality version. So I'm going to just put this aside for now, and I'll when I get to my filing cabinets, I'll put it into one of the filing cabinets and just keep it, put it away, like I've got a lot of stuff like that. As you can see, I can sort of get into my workshop a little bit, into the garage. I'm still getting there, but I will get in here really soon. It's looking good. All right. Well, that's the first thing out the way. Right. So I picked up these cassettes specifically for my barber. He likes old, you know, old kind of music, and so when they're in a case like this, you know, I just next time I go and get a haircut, I'll just give him that kind of stuff. All right, so it's an old phone, but it's not something that I'm going to keep. I'll just scrap it out and see what's in it. There's probably not going to be much. If you remember, I got a whole heap of different mice. So I'm just going to go through. I'm going to put these mice aside in a little box, and I'm just going to go through which ones I want to actually keep, because you know, that's just a generic one. Nothing spectacular, but yeah, some of the models, especially some of the old Microsoft kind of ones, just to match up with vintage PCs, and anything kind of reasonably vintage. Like this is an old 56k modem, but it's not the kind of one that I like to keep as far as vintage. So we'll just scrap that out. And yeah, I'll be there, like, just cutting a lot of cords, and you know, just pretty much try and catch up with everything that I've brought in for the week during my street scrapping. So as little as possible is hanging around for next week. Otherwise, it just starts building up really quick. I've got my little tub of insulated wire, and yeah, it's just a matter of, it's all I do is just strip it out. Here's a little, yeah, it's quite vintage-ish, but yeah, I think that might be the matching one, not sure. But things like this, you know, and right at the start, I try not to cut cords as they come out, because unless I know what they are, because I don't want to cut a cord off something that you know, I'm going to keep. But obviously there's a lot of cords that I've cut off appliances. The best thing to cut these plugs off with are actually garden shears. I just can't find mine at the moment, but yeah, garden shears make it really easy to cut off as much as you can off this actual plug, because all we have to do is cut the plugs off. So the closer you get up to the top, the more weight you keep with your insulated. So as you can see here, this chunk here, that's okay, because we've cut the plug off, and we get this little bit of extra weight. You know, it's not much, but hey, you do hundreds of cords and it certainly adds up. Now I've got my standard brass tin here, and my gold recovery pin plug bucket there, and my copper bucket here. So it's nice and handy. I pull these prongs out. A lot of these older prongs, the older plugs, are quite stiff plastic, and you can actually get the whole copper out of there. So all I do here is just twist it, just to keep it all together when I cut it, and I just snip this bit of copper wire off and put it straight into my little copper tub, and that's brass. Put that into my brass tub. Now you don't always get the copper out of these. It's just these old ones, they come out. Nice. So again, it's just one of those things, it adds up. And still got our brass, still got a little bit of copper wire in there, but we get brass for it. And these plugs, a lot of times the the copper wire is still through this, so you know, usually I just throw these straight into a empty PC or microwave oven. You know, usually get, you know, just throw them into scrap steel. In this case it's just plastic, there's no copper still through it, so I can probably just throw that away. All right, so I don't intend to talk through every single step of what I'm doing, but obviously, you know, I want to kind of explain things for new scrappers that you know, are still learning. You know, when I get things like this is auto cable. There's a red and there's a black in here somewhere. Okay, because it's new on spool, and it's it can be quite handy, this kind of stuff. When it's new, it's 5 amp single core. So for car repairs or just little delicate wiring, obviously this kind of stuff, I keep all that. This data cable, in some countries you can sell data cable like Cat 5. You can actually get better prices than mid-grade insulated, but here unfortunately in Australia, the scrapyards that I go to, they only recognise this as data cable, so it's only low grade. But I am going to a new scrapyard that might give me a little bit better prices on that, so we'll just have to check it out. All right, and phones like this, I don't bother busting open the phones. All that's in here is a piece of metal for a bit of weight and a couple of little speakers, tiny bit of wire. I don't worry, I just cut these off, throw these into scrap steel. You know, it's my scrap steel is dirty scrap steel, so you can throw in you know, a lot lower grade of steel than, say, if it was clean steel. All right, and these little phone jacks, sure, there's tiny little bit of gold plated pins in here, but you know, it's already been tested out, and we've established that you get very little gold from these plated pins. They're a very bright, shiny gold plating. It's very low grade, and the amount of work you got to go through and just to get those pins out, it's just not worth. These are the only gold plated pins that I don't keep anymore, because yeah, it's just not worth the trouble. So I just, you know, snip them off and just start processing my plugs. Might as well drop all the plugs back into the bucket and clean them up when I finish. And these UK style plugs, these real big chunky ones, sometimes they're pretty easy to get off, sometimes they're pretty hard. All I normally do is just try and twist it out. This one's a pretty easy one. So we've got this whole big chunk of brass, nice. And these ones here, all I do with these, I just twist off as much as I get off. It's usually just this end tip, but it's still chunky brass. I don't worry about the rest. And so as you can see, there's still brass going through there, there's copper wire going through there. So it's, you know, I don't have any problem throwing this into scrap steel, again, because it's low grade scrap steel. And it's just like when you're sending in a car to scrap steel, okay? A lot of times cars actually sell for more than regular scrap steel, but you got to think, you know, think about what's in a car. You got glass windows, you got seats, you got plastic on the dashboard, on the bumper bars. So there's a lot of rubbish in a whole car. So it's not all about just scrap steel. This is all, there we go. And this is all I do. Obviously I do this without talking much, but I just go, and because I don't have my garden shears, you know, I don't always go really close to the end, but that's fine. And that's how most of them come off. You don't always get the brass, the copper wire, and these prongs here, these new style with the black insulation. A lot of times this brass is quite soft, so you hardly ever get the copper wire out with them. And just leave the black insulation on them, throw them in brass, that's fine. Sometimes the insulation cracks off, then I just peel it away, just so it, you know, my tub of brass doesn't look like it's just full of insulation. And that's it, yeah. All right. Again, I don't worry about these. And just try and, you know, I'm just trying to bring down the clutter of wire, you know. And sometimes if I want to do that really quickly, I don't always process the plugs right at the same time, just to kind of speed up getting rid of the wire. And but one thing you don't want to do, or certainly I don't want to do, is let these plugs build up and like fill up a bucket of 50 or 100, because then doing these all, you know, so many of them, it's just, it turns out to be a really big job. And you know, it turns out, you know, it's just no longer fun. So I try, as I go, try and snip them off. But if I'm trying to do a lot at one time, you know, trying to get rid of a lot of wire, then yeah, I might leave 20 of them or so and do them as soon as I finish. Okay. It's got a little circuit board on there, so just snip off this wire. This just goes into a little low grade. This wire here is actually low grade because it's the coax. Sometimes when they're black like this, you can kind of get away with just throwing it into mid grade. But when you've got really big pieces or a lot of it, then obviously if you put in mid grade, you're going to downgrade all your good stuff. So I'll just clean up some of these plugs. So this is just one tub, and I've got 3 more tubs here. I've got some stuff that I want to go through as well. So it's just straight out like speakers. I don't bother getting the copper out because it's just, for the amount of work you got to go through just to get that tiny little bit of copper out of them, I don't bother, straight into scrap steel. And obviously these adapters, always get out the brass. Sometimes on the street, cord cutters have already come and cut the cord. I still pick them up most of the time just to get the bit of brass out of there. I'll do a few of them. Just get rid of this one. Okay. Little modems. Okay. In these little ones, there's really not a whole lot to them. Only a little board. I prefer the slightly bigger ones, but still, it's a circuit board. And we, you know. Okay, so these ones don't actually open up very easily, so all I do here is just pop it open with my little mallet. Okay. Yeah, just give it a little pop. That's it. They pop straight open. Okay, so we just got a bit of rubbish plastic. Cut a bit of wire off this antenna. And there we have it. Just a little circuit board. It's just a mid-grade board, right? So just throw it straight into mid-grade. Sometimes, as you can see, there's 3 crystals on it. There's really nothing for precious metal recovery. You know, I might pinch a couple of the crystals. Because it's only mid-grade, I'll take them all. And yeah, I just throw this straight into a mid-grade board. Mid-grades are a bit full at the moment. Got to go and empty that, but that's all that is. Well, mid-grade here, interstates, it's a peripheral board usually. Yeah. So with these little crystals, what I like to do is remove the plastic off the backs, off the ones that have the plastic. A lot of them don't have plastic, but when they do, I like to just break off these little pins, right? And most of the time they come off really easy, and just get rid of that plastic. So now I've got a clean crystal. If I ever do go to process these for silver, if it, you know, silver ever goes up to make it worthwhile, I've already started the process. So, you know, I've just got clean crystals. And I just got my little temporary tub of crystals. So just a mixture. There's one with rubber. So I mix them all in this temporary tub. But later, when this starts getting full, I'll separate it and just sit down and just go through. I like to separate the long ones to the short ones, and get the crystal oscillators out, which have got the 4-pin bottoms, and also I separate the crystal oscillators with the gold bases just to keep them separate. And there you go. Alright, so anything, here's another big modem, and the rest of this tub is all just wire. So I'm not going to try and, you know, I don't want to make every video all about cutting wire, because how many of that you want to see. So here I just, usually a lot of these modems are little Torx screws, so I always have a couple of Torx screws. They're usually like a T9, T8 or T9. So I'll just get these Torx screws out. But yeah, this is another one that doesn't sort of seem to, this one might pop open. There's a couple more Torx. Thought it was going to be like the last one where I just got to crack it. I still might. There we go. So just damn plastic. Okay, so this one's got huge torque screws. I might have a, there we go. A lot of times I also, when I come back from street scrapping, I don't necessarily put everything in tubs and bring it in. Sometimes I like to, or mostly I like to scrap things out as I'm taking it out of the van. It just depends if I've got time and whether I need the van for other things. But here we go. So again, it's just a mid-grade board or a peripheral board, like they pretty much all are. There's nothing really that stands out. Like under these heat sinks, there'll be a nice little chip here. Sometimes they're good BGAs, sometimes not. But because you're selling it as, like I'm selling this as a mid-grade board, it's low value. So there's some crystal, some MLCCs a little bit bigger that I might want to take. Also a tiny little wind bond Bga chip here. So if you took this little chip off, no one's really going to notice, you know what I mean? So it's not really going to downgrade the board. Well, once you start removing the chips from the main under these heat sinks, then you're starting to devalue the board. You risk turning it into a low grade board. But I'll just put this aside with other boards that I've got here that I'm going to pick some stuff off. Okay, this is something. All right. Okay, so these are little microphones, right? Quite nice old microphones, still intact. Sanyos, these are actually quite good. I've got vintage audio stuff and microphones as well. I don't have small ones like this. Prestige, this is a nice little microphone as well. So that's beautiful. I would have just picked this up off street scrapping and just not even realize what it actually was. So again, this is the kind of stuff that obviously I don't scrap, and I just put it in with my personal stuff. And and even if I decide to like sell a whole heap of stuff, this will just go with audio and it will just be part of a nice little package. So I'm always happy to pick up stuff to keep. Here's the black version of that auto cable. Got two of them. Okay, so the rest is just cable. I remember this cable, this was off a vacuum cleaner. So that's a huge wad of insulated wire just from one old vac. Look at that. Straight in. Cut the brass. Okay, looks like I've got to change the battery on the camera. So the rest is just cords. We've got a lot of cords to go through, so I'll just leave this one aside and I'll go on to another tub, and I've got to change this battery. So I did pick up one good laptop, a compact. So the same deal as with the the sewing machine. Just want to give it a quick test and see if it works. If it works, I put it aside for my buyer to come along, and if he wants to buy it, great. I'm pretty sure there was a power supply that came with it. There we go. Perfect. Oh no. Oh yes. This is it. So my battery's going to drop out any second. When it does, I'll just I'll come back when I put a fresh one in. But I'll just plug it in quickly. We might get a couple of seconds out of the battery. Hopefully. Yep, perfect. Okay, looks like, and we've got power. Yep, comes on. Compact. So it's a Presario M2000. And I've got the password and all that. So it's Windows XP. It's loading up. Because it's bright outside, it's you can't really see much. But it's powering up. So I'll just let that power up and charge up a bit, and I'll go and change this battery. Okay, new battery. All right, Well, welcome, David. It was David's PC. It's loading on. So it seems to work okay. Compact Presario. Awesome. That's all we want. He's got his family pictures, and you'd think when people throw their computer out and stuff, you'd think that they would delete personal files or pictures, but that's all right. I guess they had nothing to hide. But awesome. So one laptop ready to go. It's power supply unit with it. That's the most important thing. The other thing I wanted to just check quickly is this really nice Panasonic hard disk drive DVD. These are pretty good models, and I can't see any reason why it wouldn't work. Still got the HDMI cable in it. It looks like just the original HDMI cable, so probably not a really high quality one. I'm just going to put this aside. Obviously I'm not going to scrap this out, and yeah, I just like these DVD recorders. They kind of, it's a strange technology. They came in and quite a few people got them, but then they sort of went out of fashion. We got, you know, different kind of television these days. It's sort of like at call TV programs, so it's a little bit different. But because it was such a quick technology, I do want to keep a few of them, just in case we got some, you know, because 10 years down the track, I know I'm going to think, oh, I should have kept a few of those recording DVDs, because I'll probably come up with some idea. And so now's a good time as any to start keeping the better quality models. So anything, if I find Sony or Panasonic, they're the two that I kind of like. So more of these plugs. And as I said, I always, even if the cord's already been cut off, I like to pick these up. This one's, I can feel it's just super lightweight. There'd be not much in there, but still we got the brass out of there. So I've got 3 here. So that's what I'm going to do. Whenever you're smashing these, it's always a good idea just to put on safety glasses, but usually I just close my eyes as I'm about to smash it. And there's not much to it. You just want to pop it open like that, and look at all that beautiful brass in there. I mean, it's not super heavy, but it adds up. I prefer when they don't smash up into a million pieces. Okay, so, you know, this is a real classic example of stuff that goes into landfill, because no e-waste recycling company is going to process this, and it's just going to straight into landfill without anyone really even thinking about it. And if you look at it, you know, there's a lot of resources here that, you know, are valuable resources. Not so much valuable resources to a company, but valuable for the planet, you know, because this is good brass and copper wire that, you know, okay, we can't do much about the plastic, you know. If anyone's got a problem with the plastic going into landfill like this, because no one wants to recycle it, well, they're going to come up with a better idea on how to make these out of aluminium rather than plastic. Or, you know, the people that complain about them, well, they shouldn't buy them in the first place and contribute to it. So, but that's another story. That's not much I can do about it. So, lovely. So, you've got little bits of brass. And like I said, it's not going to, you know, take quite a lot of this to start making good money out of it. But hey, it all adds up. And, you know, in no time, before you realise, you get, you know, quite a lot of brass to take to the scrapyard. Insulated copper wire, again, all adds up. This little thing, I don't worry anything about this. These ones look like they're just, no, they could be brass. Yep. So these little prongs, also a bit of brass, again, into our brass tub, and I just throw this into scrap steel, and they still get, at least it still gets processed, and it still comes back as scrap steel. Yeah. So these ones here, you can snip off that little bit of brass if you really want to get into it. The rest, just throw it in the scrap steel. You know, but I do get a lot of them, so it doesn't take long to build up quite a decent weight from them. And obviously also the wire. Yeah, so I was thinking of doing a video like this. I'll just no sort of set theme, just random scrapping of stuff as I get it. And hopefully in the comment section people start commenting and give me more ideas on how I can do these scrap session videos, what might, you know, be a good idea to do whilst I'm doing these videos. You know, some might say, yeah, probably one of the best things you could do is don't talk too much. That's all right. You know, I'm all happy for constructive criticism. You know, I don't get offended if people tell me I'm doing something wrong. You know, it's you know, I don't delete comments unless they get too offensive. You know, they try and you know, there's plenty of ways to tell people they're doing something wrong. But, you know, you don't have to add like, oh, you're an idiot or something like that. You know, it's not necessary. And so, yeah, but I'm all for constructive criticism, but I really like people giving me ideas and just telling me, you know, what they'd like to see, you know, how I should, you know, do things. And not that, you know, I'll always take it on board, but, you know, I take it on board, but whether I do it or not, well, it's just depending on how I feel and what I've got planned. So here we just got a circuit board. Obviously I just picked up a random circuit board out of the rubbish. Again, probably the sort of thing that would have just went straight into landfill, you know. just would have been one of those things that it would have just got shredded up, and no one's taken any paid any attention to it. So I just want to clean off these plugs, obviously, to get our mid-grade insulated. SATA. The SATA's got the gold recovery bits in here, so I just put that in my gold recovery, same as this these little SATAs. Snip off a little bit more than I, because I'd rather have a little bit more on the actual wire. So there we go. And now what I kind of recommend people, instead of bringing me low grade boards to sell to me or to sell to anyone, if you've got the time, you've got chunky aluminium and you got copper transformers, so you can value add to this instead of just throwing it into low grade. If you've got the time, that is. The only thing I like to do sometimes, especially if they're really big, these ones are only small, but you can see these exposed copper coils. I just like to snip that. You get it and you just pull it out. A little ferrite bead that fell off. So I just snip off this copper wire, and as you can see, it's really not noticeable. You're getting a little bit extra value, I suppose. I mean, you'd have to weigh it up, because you're also removing a ferrite core off the board. But yeah, let me just. So this little ferrite bead, if it was on the board, obviously you'd get board price for it. But even still, you throw this into your scrap metal pressing steel, because it is ferrite, sort of like a steel, crumbly steel. So you're still getting your value for that, but now we've got a little bit of burnt copper grade copper wire that we can put in for our copper melts, or just sell it as copper. So we still got a low grade board. And same we could do with all these ones. I don't, because I just don't have time to do all this sort of stuff. And so same with a lot of scrappers that don't have time. They'll just bring me the low grade boards. They get better than scrap steel price anyway. And there we go. All right. So I've got my little empty PC tower here, as I do with all my empty PCs, or as many as I can. I just leave them like this when I scrap them out, and I just use it for junk. Just throw in all kinds of junk that I've scrapped out. All my screws go straight back into PCs, and that's it. That's my little scrap steel bin. When it fills up, close it up, screw it back up, and that goes to the scrapyard like that with extra weight. So I've mentioned that many times before probably, but for all the newbies, people that just want to learn, I try and give out just sort of explain what I do. Okay, so these Panasonic, these cordless phones, usually I do scrap these out. Just get the little battery out, cut that little bit of wire off the battery. That one was a little bit corroded, so we've got corrosive stuff. Just so I'm not handling it, tap it in. All right. So yeah, I'm much more organized when I'm obviously not making a video, and I just go at my own pace. I'm not sitting here countless hours doing this. I'll come out, cut a few cords, scrap a few little bits, go back in, make some lunch, come back out, you know, and make coffee, sit down. It's just mostly in my downtime. Okay, because it's got a really heavy steel weight here, right? I'm not even going to bother taking it off the plastic. I'll just throw it straight into that. That's the beauty of throwing scrap steel into a PC cavity or a microwave, is that, you know, you can get away with a little bit of rubbish. If your scrapyard buys scrap steel as dirty scrap steel, then they expect a little bit of rubbish anyway. And like I said, the best way to think about it is when you're selling a scrap car. Most of the scrap car is not actually even steel. So it's a lot of plastic and glass. But this piece here, this you know, is just rubbish. Got a little speaker out of there, throw that into steel. And there's our little peripheral board, or mid-grade board here in Australia. So again, the only thing I want to take are these two crystals for my own personal thing. If they got long legs, I like to take off the legs because it's only dead weight. But for a lot of people that aren't sort of keeping these crystals for you know, one day perhaps silver recovery, you might as well just leave it on the board and get your value from it on the board, because you're probably not getting much value by taking it off. Mid-grade, I mean low grade, yeah, but mid-grade, it's so whether it's worth taking the crystals off. But when it gets to motherboards, it's not worth taking off the crystals, because you're getting more value from the crystal being on the motherboard than you would just selling the crystal to me on its own, because they're really not much value. Only $2 to $3 a kilo. All right, so what else have I got here? Oh yeah, I picked up these Sony blank cassettes, brand new in packet still. Right, and these look reasonably good. Yeah, they're sort of like your standard range, but I like to keep cassettes when they're brand new still in packets, because they're getting harder to find. And you know, when I'm with vintage stuff, you know, I don't know why, but I keep all cassettes when they're in their plastic. I just got a big box of them. These are TomToms. It's still got a vehicle mount. I don't need that actually. So I keep these TomToms. I'm not going to scrap this one out right now, because I've got a whole bunch of things like this, TomToms, different models and other kinds of brands, as well as cell phone kind of things that I keep that I'm probably going to scrap another time. See, I got a whole tub here of all different kinds of things. I got you know, different scanners, Blackberries, these are the internet things, all kinds of weird things, scanner. So I'm keeping all these. There's another TomTom, and one day I'll scrap a whole bunch of that stuff out, but that barrel's actually full now, so I'll probably transfer it into a bigger barrel, and yeah, one day I'll scrap it out. Again, just cable with these phone jack ones, RJ32s or whatever they are. I don't worry about, they're really not worth worrying about for gold recovery. I just get the cord, I just throw these into scrap steel. Not worth the time. And I get so many of them, it would take a lifetime to get all these. You know, see there's two tiny little gold pins in there, and yeah, I think it was a guy on YouTube, I think his name was Successful Engineer. If if you check out his videos, you'll see there's a video on him processing these jacks. He really got virtually nothing out of them. These printer cables with the USB on one side. So when I cut these USBs off, I always try and cut off a bit of this rubber to keep it on the wire. And I keep USBs because they're a bit better for gold recovery. When I get remote controls, I don't do anything with, I don't bother opening up remote controls to get the virtually nothing low-grade board out of there. So I just throw that into scrap metal and let them get their stuff out of it. We've got telephone extension cords, just a cheap telephone extension cord, but sometimes it's 5 meters, sometimes they come in handy. When they're in packets like that, I tend to keep them, but you really don't want to see how much cable I got. I got barrels of cables. Okay, so we've got a power supply unit here. It's a HP power supply. I'm not sure what it's from, so I don't scrap these out. Anything with brand names, there's a lot of generic power supplies that I'll scrap out. You can just bust this open, you can get the power board out of there. In a lot of cases, like here in Australia, you can just cut the cords off and you can sell this as irony aluminium, which really it's the same value as if you busted it open and got the board out. You might as well just sell it as irony alley. But in this case, when they're like HP, IBM, or Sony, or a good brand name, I always keep them, and I just want to make sure, just check the model number to see what it's actually from, because sometimes these can be quite valuable. I can get 20-25 bucks just for these. So I always keep these, put in one of my storage barrels, and one day I'm just going to go through the whole lot. Obviously just generic mice or any kind of modern mouse I don't worry about. Cut the cord, keep the USB, and here this will be okay. That's a Nokia, so cell phone I don't worry about. I don't keep cell phones, so I just want the cord. These aren't worth busting open. I just take off my bit of brass and throw it into scrap steel. You're still getting value for it. Here's an antenna cable. Technically, this antenna cable is low grade because it's only antenna wire. There's very little copper in there. But if you're scrapping a lot of insulated wire, you can take off these plugs. Okay, and a lot of time, there's very little copper wire in there, but because it's just a black cable, looks like most. If you're not doing too many, as I said, you just put it into your normal insulated and you'll get away with it, as long as you're cutting the plugs off. Usually they won't notice. If they happen to notice, which I doubt, well, you just say, my mistake, and just pull it out. But usually they don't notice it. Same with this kind of cable. Technically, if it was blue or yellow, it would stand out, and it looks like, and my yard at the moment sees this as a low grade data cable. It's really not low grade, but I don't want to argue with them, so I might start. I'm going to a new yard, so I might try them out and see if they actually pay better for it, because it really is better than low grade. But yeah, so but this kind of job, it's this kind of scrapping, it's not hard, it takes time, but it's the sort of thing you do in your downtime, and it's just fun, and it's just it's quite relaxing, as long as you got no one sort of yapping in the background, or if you're left alone to fiddle with this kind of stuff. This is the kind of stuff that it's quite enjoyable, and if you're not in a hurry or panicking to make as much money as you can. Like this phone cable here, I get so much of it. I've already kept enough of it, and like I said, I keep it when it's brand new in packet. Otherwise, just cut off these little plugs straight into mid-grade insulated wire, and nice, easy. Okay. Yeah. So again, if this series of video scrap sessions, it's all going to be pretty much based on just when I go out street scrapping. So if I've got specific things that I want to scrap out, I'll probably still just do separate videos for them. But this is just for random stuff, and just for those people that just want a bit of chill out entertainment, where they can just you know, pick up a few pointers, just antenna cable. And this, I mean, it's slightly yellow, slightly gold plated, but honestly it's so light that it's just not worth the processing to try and get the gold out of this kind of one. Nah, if they're really nice and you know, more orangey, yellowy, sure, but that one not. All right. Oh yeah, got a whole bunch of floppies and DVDs, CD players, old vintage ones. With the floppies, I don't really worry about them. You can throw this into irony aluminium if you've got a irony alley bucket. Normally I don't, only sometimes if I get quite a lot of irony alley and I have a spare bin, I'll make a tub of irony alley, but just don't get much extra value for it, so I don't worry about it. I just like to get this board. It's got some nice, these old ones have got nice gold fingers here, or sorry, gold pins. Otherwise it's just a mid-grade board or a peripheral board. The only other thing, if you want to just get a little bit extra value rather than sending it to scrap steel, is to just take out this little motor. Pull it out. Okay, so we've got a little motor here with the brass prong here. So all I do here is, obviously the brass is worth 7 or 8 times more than the actual motor. So just got my good pliers, double strength. There goes the brass prong. I'll pick it up later. But now I can just throw this into motors, and the brass bit obviously in brass. So just to get a little bit extra value out of it. Now, like I said, you could strip all this out and try and get this aluminium, but for the time it takes, it's just not worth it. If you do have an irony alley tub, I might make one up, since I've got quite I've got a little bit to start off. So I'll just keep this and I'll throw it into irony alley, and we'll get at least one batch of irony alley out for the scrapyard, because I've got quite a few that I've picked up. And then just anything like this is just a answering machine. So I'll just process the cord. Done. And straight up. It's the kind of thing I don't like to just put aside. No point in having this hanging around. Whatever circuit board's in there, just take it out. It'll probably just, you know, it'll be a little mid-grade board. There's another screw under this panel, I reckon. Yep. Okay. So it's just pretty much just a low-grade board, very low value, but you know, a little bit more value than selling it as scrap steel. And yeah, I don't have any problems picking this kind of stuff up, because this is what I like to do, you know. and it's still electronics. It's still, there's a battery that we want to take out. This is just rubbish. Alright, so if I just clean up some of this wire off, that's just a little, there's nothing really on this board, don't have to take it off. But because it's got this board, it's still got the speaker on there and screws and stuff. Most of the weight is in the steel, right? It's a little bit of plastic. I can throw that into the PC as scrap steel. And because it's a low grade board, even though it's green on one side and it's got a couple of chips, still it's just a low grade board. It's more for copper recovery and base metal recovery, if you like, rather than precious metal recovery. So obviously the wire, to give an example, the wire is worth $2 a kilo. On the board it's only worth 25-30 cents a kilo. So obviously we want to take out a wire off and get the best value. Just snip it back into there. Even this ribbon wire, this is low grade, but it's still $1 a kilo. Leave it on the board, it's only 30 cents a kilo. So it's not much, it's not even 1 cent, but you know, it all adds up. So you don't get a kilo unless you start with a gram, and that's just how it goes. By the end of the month or whatever, you know, you got a decent amount to sell. So the only thing here I want is this long crystal. Right, we've got a crystal, and there we go, just a low grade board. And this one, it's you can get away with a mid grade board, but if you're into gold recovery and you want these pins, then if you remove this mid grade, the pin side of it, you can keep these pins for gold recovery. And these two boards are still technically this is, it's got no chips, it's a low grade, but we can just throw it into mid grade. This one's got the chip. And where's my low grade? So we still got mid grade out of this board, even though we've taken off the gold recovery pins. Okay, so we can put that into mid grade, and this is just low grade brown board, even though it's green on one side and it's got chips. I mean, technically, because it's base metal recovery anyway, right? So what I should be doing here is removing the flat pack and the IC chip, because on their own they're worth a lot more than 30 cents a kilo from this board. See, like these two chips here on their own, $10 to $12 a kilo. So if I left them on there, only going to get 30 cents a kilo. Now we get $10 to $12. ICs $10, $10.50. Flat packs $12.50, I think. So ICs go into my IC bin. Flat packs go into a separate bin. Put them away. All right. Next, it's a Uniden phone for a cordless. Well, it's a phone base for a cordless phone. Same deal. Not a heap of value, but as you see in my street scrap videos, I'm picking these up whenever I see them. I try and pick them up. Anything like this, electronic, well, almost anything. Some things I can tell that there's not going to be much of a board in there. It's just going to give me just more rubbish, because I've got to deal with this plastic still, you know, and that's why, you know, I still get people asking me, why don't I pick up printers? There's just too much plastic in a printer to deal with compared to the board. Like, you're getting 15 cents worth of circuit board out of something that then you've got, you know, a bucket full of plastic just for that one. So I can't just open this easily. Can't see my screwdriver, so I'll just go down, start it off, we go. Okay, so on this side, as you can see, we've got a speaker and a brown board, but this is just for the control, so there's really going to be nothing on here. I'm not even going to bother like 2, 4, 6, 8 screws to get this board off, and there's no value. So it's, for me, it's not worth it, but if you're curious, I'll take these screws off. I'll just fast forward the video. Okay, so sometimes it could surprise you, but as you can see, there's nothing. It's just it's like a kind of like a silver trace. It's like similar to what a keyboard is, but yeah, and that's just where the contact points are for the actual buttons. So there's nothing there and nothing there. This is not a mid-grade, sorry, a low-grade board, because there's nothing on it, and there's nothing on this side. There's no chips, there's no real copper recovery. It's, you know, just virtually nothing. So this is not a low-grade board. So I'm not going to throw this into low-grade. I throw this into scrap steel, because there is some metals on there that they'll probably get out of, but certainly not low-grade. But we do have our mid-grade here. It should be a mid-grade. They usually are. Just depends on the brand. It's just a little bit hard to scrap at the same time as trying to keep the camera, keep it in line with the camera and all that kind of thing. So it's just a bit awkward, you know. Sometimes I'm fiddling around. So we'll have a look. So okay, so this is I think it was Uniden, so not a bad brand. Now we've got this as rubbish. Low grade insulated wire. Okay, so that is a nice little mid-grade board, or peripheral board if you like. And okay, so this looks like the battery here. Now we've always got to take off batteries. No, it's not the battery, and that's pretty cool. It's yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not into electronics that much to know, but it's got some nice copper in there. Wow. For a tiny little tube, we'll get as much as we can get off it without spending too much time on it. There you go. Nice little ball of #1 copper. So I can snip off some of this wire, and on this wire you'll see these 2 metal springs. These are gold plated springs. They're the contact points for the charger. So I don't want to get the solder part, because that's just going to contaminate these springs. So I want to cut a little bit above. That will save us in the recovery process. Still got a little bit of pin on these, but I don't want to get the solder, and that's just insulated wire. And now we've got our 2 nice fully gold plated pins. Okay, so these would be more like a reverse electroplate system, rather than into putting it into any chemical solution, because there's no exposed base metal. You're best off going for reverse electroplate. So just put it, it all adds up, those things. So there we go, just another mid-grade board. Nothing spectacular in my case, but as I said, it's not worth if you don't try and accumulate crystals. There we go, mid-grade board. That was out of that. All right. So yeah, as I said, if you've got ideas on how I should go about this scrap session series of videos, let me know, because this is the first one, and you know, I've already got a feeling that I've probably already gone too long and spoken too much. I don't want to I like to teach people as new scrappers and stuff, but I don't want to try and make out that I'm, you know, that I'm like really knowledgeable in everything. I'm just knowledgeable in how I do things in my sort of thing, but this is all wire that's going to need processing, unless there's oddball. Yeah, when there's really oddball kind of cables, yeah, well, this one was cut off something, so it doesn't really matter now. We can just process it. But if it was all intact, sometimes if it's unusual, I'll keep it, because it could be for something very unusual that might be really hard to get. Okay, so that's a 5-pin socket, but we do this little part here with the female side of it, and it's turns into the oh, I can't even think anymore, the PS2 sort of port. I'll keep this. This is just a good little extension. Keep that. All right. So this is just cable, going through a lot of cable. Sometimes within the cable, this is just tubing, just picking it up accidentally. But I really need my garden shears to do this properly, because these side cutters just don't open up wide enough to really get in. But I'll just do one here. Get my brass, scrap steel. Too easy. So yeah, this part takes, you know, this tub, it takes a long time, but as I said, you don't do it if you've got money making things to do. Just do it in your downtime. It is quite relaxing if you're not in a hurry to cash it. That's just all cables. All right, so we've gotten through 2 tubs, and I picked up this tub, so it's just a spare tub temporarily, because it's an easy recyclable plastic. I don't mind picking them up when I need it. I might even throw it back in the van for the next street scrap session, but I can always send this off to the recyclers if I've had enough of using it. I do want to get into all those DVDs, and obviously when I pick up these DVDs here, I want to scrap. But one thing I wanted to have a look at, because a few people have mentioned from the last street scrap video, is one of the PCs that I picked up. That was the one that's sort of already been pulled apart. But this one here, some people were saying that this is a gaming PC, and I can already see it's and I mentioned the 2 slot cards, but someone was saying that it might just be one big video card. They're obviously video, but yeah, yeah. See, these are the ones to look out for when if you're just street scrapping and you're not into computers or anything like that. A good indication of a PC that's got good sellable components is, see this port here, the USB 3. Usually they're blue. So when you see a blue USB port, USB 3, that should tell you that the motherboard is a pretty good motherboard. It's still sought after. People still want these, well, because USB 3 is pretty new. And so these are worth, you know, keeping and not scrapping out. This one's looks like it's half been open. I'm not sure what's been taken out, but you know, quite a few people have said, "Oh, don't scrap it, don't scrap it." Well, I'm not a PC guy, so if I don't scrap a PC, it's only because I'm going to pass it on to sell to someone else. Now, it's missing these grills, but I've got the grills. They were just loose in the bottom of in one of the tubs, so I can still put it together, but it doesn't really matter because the tower is not the important part, because especially with people that are building PCs, okay, they can, you know, sometimes they prefer to use their own kind of like fancy tower, and it's a huge Cool Master. It's quite dusty actually. It's gotten your standard household dust. It's got quite a impressive graphics card, Wind Force. So it's a gigabit motherboard. So, but it's a USB 3. So that's where I know that it's for a start. This motherboard is going to be pretty good. I'm not sure what the CPU is going to be like. The power supply, yeah, 925. So it's quite a powerful power supply. I know, you know, some of my friends that buy PCs from me, check it out. Oh, look at all that dust. That's amazing. Have specifically told me to look out for any motherboards with the USB 3 port, the blue port. They definitely will buy them from me. So I don't really want to scrap it out. I'll just check out the RAM, because that's easy enough. So the yeah, Corsair. All right. So, well, it's not a super powerful one. It's the 2x2 gigabytes. So 4 gigabyte in total. So this one is only 2 gigabyte RAM stick. So the machine's only a 4 gigabyte RAM system. Obviously it could be probably upgraded. You could throw a couple more in there, bring it up to 8. Anything gaming these days, you wouldn't want anything less than 16, but really for a decent gaming machine these days you want 32 gig of RAM. But 16 would still be pretty good. Yeah, and the only way to remove this CPU, to have a look at the CPU, is to yeah, I'd have to get rid of, oh yeah, the fan just clips out. That's a good one. Wow, this heatsink, they probably threw it out because it's just got so much dust. They didn't realize why it's not working as quick. Well, look at all that dust just come from the front of that heatsink. So I reckon it's probably an i3 CPU. So yep, this was a gaming one, and in its time it was probably a super one, but in today's standards it's really, you know, this is barely entry level. Nice heatsink. I'm not gonna, like, I'm pulling it apart, but just as a PC repairer would rather than as a scrapper would. So it looks like we've got at least an i3. That's what I'm assuming it's going to be. This really needs a complete blowout with an air compressor to blow it all out and start again, or take out the motherboard. That's the ideal thing, and put into a you know, a better tower, I reckon. I'll just have a look at what the CPU is. Okay, so it's an i5 2500. i5 2500. It might be a SR00T. So it's well, it's an i5. it's probably, you know, like for me, when I sell this kind of stuff, I sell the 2 gig RAM sticks, I sell the i5, and I usually get about close to what I would get trying to sell it as a complete PC, without the hassle of trying to send out a complete PC and not knowing if any other components are broken. Who knows, you know, the power supply might be faulty, and then you sell this on eBay as a complete PC and something faulty. What are they going to do? They're going to send it straight back to you. So I lose shipping and all this mucking around, whereas, you know, nothing really goes wrong with the CPUs. So this i5, I might be able to sell this i5 for $50. I might, you know, the RAM, they're only 2 gig sticks, so I barely get $10 for the pair. But still, that could be $60 there. I know that people buy these motherboards. I might get $40 for the motherboard. You know, so I'd rather sell the components to the people that I know will buy it, rather than trying to sell a complete PC to just anybody. But I'd love to know what this video card is. And someone was right. Yep, it's not 2 slot cards. It's just one big video card. So I'm just going to leave that until one of my buyers comes and has a look at it. But just out of interest's sake, and like I said, I already know how to get value out of this, but you know, for someone that's into PCs, or you know, wanted to spend a bit of time on something like this and clean it out and put the heatsink back together, and that, you know, if they can't afford it, they might have themselves a good little gamer for a few years. But with only 4 gig RAM, you'd so it's a WindForce anti-turbulence cooling. It's a gigabit. Yeah, it looks, it's got an impressive heatsink on it. It's certainly all about the cooling on this, but I don't think it's like a super quality one. But, you know, it's got all the right stuff on it. Geez, I just can't get over how much dust. So, yeah, that's the model of the motherboard. So, I'm just going to carefully leave this here. Because all I will do is just take out the i5 and the RAM, get my money there, the motherboard, maybe I can sell that, and the graphics card to another buyer, but it's a lot of mucking around. Still got a hard drive in there, but if anyone's interested in a gaming console, and you want to make a decent offer, like just for the CPU and the RAM, and the rest you can have for free, the good motherboard, it's got to be worth, because it's a USB 3, it's got to be worth $40, plus this graphics card, who knows, could be worth a couple $100. But if someone really needs a gaming console here in Melbourne, and you're willing to come here and pick it up and just pay for the RAM and the CPU, like not top dollar, but I'm thinking like something like, you know, 40 to 50 bucks. 50 bucks might be fair. I don't know. It might not even be worth 50 bucks, but it's got to be, because I know I can sell the CPU for probably close to that. So there you go. So that's the gaming console, or the gaming tower. As I said, I'm pretty sure I've got all the little grills here for this, but you might even want to put it into a better tower, who knows. And I don't know if it works. So that's the problem with selling PCs. I just don't have time or the patience to test out that sort of stuff, because it's not my thing. I'm not a PC repairman or into PCs like that. When I need a PC, I go to somewhere like Dell and I just buy one brand new and be done with it. but being an eWaste recycler, I have had my fair share of PCs. But yeah, other guys would say, oh, they'd love that, you know, but they're in another country or something. Well, what do you do? I'm not even prepared to post it in my country, let alone to another country. It's just too much. I just don't have time. So our standard set-top box or DVD or whatever, in this case it's a set-top box. This is what it's basically all about. It's not a great deal, but I do pick them up because this is what I enjoy doing. I get my scrap steel when I finish, get a bit of scrap steel, but all I'm doing this for is just to get the two boards. Low grade, mid grade, that's it. And that's what it's all about for me. So the last street scrapping session was pretty good. It was, for the time it took, it was really quick. I was only out there for a bit over an hour, and I did get quite a lot. As you saw, I got a lot of cable that I got to process. But hopefully I have some days that I go out there and I pick up a lot of, you know, good value stuff and stuff that I like to keep, and a lot more PCs. I only got 2 PCs, so it wasn't heaps. But I still had the fun. So there we go. Low grade board, very low value. Rather than bring it to me, you're probably better off removing the transformers and selling them at the scrapyard, removing your extruded aluminium, regular aluminium. In my case, the best I do is just I go for these little copper coils just to add a little bit more to my copper. See, and you don't even notice it's missing. It's still a low grade board, and I've got my tiny bit of copper. There you go, bit of copper. Boards like this, you can see it's a green board, right? It's kind of got an IC chip on there. It's got these jacks. This is not a mid-grade board, or, you know, a peripheral board in the States. This is a low-grade board, or a mid-grade board in America, or a low-grade board here. Just because it's green doesn't always mean that it's a mid-grade board, you know. It's got to have stuff on there for precious metal recovery. If it's just base metal recovery, then it's just going to be a low-grade board. Okay. Just low grade data cable kind of stuff. A nice little mid grade board. And again, in this case, this crystal has got some solder. So I don't like these ones. I just leave these ones on when they've got a little bit of solder. And this complete thing like this, as it is, I don't remove anything off this, just leave it as a mid-grade board and sell it as is. Because it's got this extra dead weight, these jacks, a lot of scrap steel weight here. Pretty lucky to get mid-grade, you know, board here in Australia, or not sure in America. You might get away with this as a peripheral, but they might just class it as what they class mid-grade there, which is what we class low-grade here. Okay, but that's it. And so that's all I get out of these set-top boxes and stuff, is just your mid and your low. But I pick them up, and since I've got them, I've got to process them. Obviously, again, I do have the scrap steel, so some people say, why don't I pick up scrap metal? Well, I do. It just doesn't look like scrap metal at the time. But as soon as I take out what I want out of this, we've got plenty of scrap metal, the whole case. So that's my idea of scrap metal anyway. Okay, so we've got the DVD driver on the actual low-grade board. Sometimes they do it like that, so you've got to actually remove the whole driver. And I'll just nice mid-grade board here. Actually, it's quite heavily depopulated for what it is. I'll just get this ribbon. Low grade. Okay. Yeah, and you see, if we want a little bit extra value, we can get these two motors. And we'll put them into motors. Certainly worth more than just scrap steel. Beautiful. Two motors. All adds up. Now, we want to get our little board out. Okay. I've got so much junk on there. I can't find my flathead screwdriver, my big one. These little plastic grommets. There we go. So there we go. Just a low grade board. And again, when these cables are sitting on here, not worth leaving them on, because we're only getting 30 cents a kilo for the low grade board, whereas the low grade wire, it's still $1 a kilo, so it's still getting much better value. But that's as basic as you can get, and that's why they call them low grade, because all they're really getting out of this is base metals, a little bit of copper, a little bit of aluminium scattered around, little capacitors that got iron aluminium, little transformer. So not much value here. That's why low grade boards don't sell for much. But we do have a very nice mid-grade board. Actually, it's got an EEPROM here. It looks like an EEPROM. Yeah. So we've got the glass window EEPROM, and this one's a gold one. So that's a good one. So we take that one off. When I find the screw, there we go. Battery's going down again. Okay, so we've got a nice ceramic EEPROM. Put that aside. Got our long crystal, our short crystal, and so we've got scrap steel. So this board, again, peripheral mid-grade board, but as you can see, there's quite a few chips on here and probably a little bit overvalued for what it is. So if we're only getting mid-grade for this, now not everyone should do this, you always should check with your buyer. Now even though I'm a buyer, you always still got to check, because if you remove too many things, you're going to devalue stuff. So, but there we go, we've got a nice flat pack here. put towards gold recovery, and that's a little bit better. You know, we've still got a good flat pack, little ones there, ICs, so we're still getting better value. Probably one more thing, this is the memory one, these flat long ones, Siemens or Samsung. So that's a memory IC. I like to keep these two, but only because there's still a lot of chips on there, so, and there's no real rubbish, whereas the other mid-grade here, you can see all this rubbish that the buyer has got to pay for just to get these few chips, whereas this one, they're still getting more chips but no rubbish. So it's still a good value mid-grade board to a buyer, even though we've removed now and got extra value from one memory chip and one BGA. That's all I do. But again, you got to check with your buyer, because you send them, especially if you're posting them stuff, if you send them stuff and you're thinking you're going to get X amount, it could be downgraded. So make sure you don't depopulate boards unless you know who you're selling to and how they buy. So yeah, there's a little memory chip. I just put these separately into special memory ICs and a nice Samsung flat pack. All right. So what's next? These modems are very standard. I get these. I probably do 6 or 7 a week. I get them from pretty much everywhere. Your standard 6 torque screws. My battery's running down, so by the time I get through this, it'll be flat. But these are really easy to go through, scrap out, and because once you've undone the 6 screws, it just opens up nice and easy. We've got our plastic for rubbish, we've got our board that just pops out, more rubbish, and there we go. We've got ourselves just a ready to go mid-grade board. It's not a telecom board, even though it's sort of got, it's just a mid-grade board. It's got a lot of heavy dead weight, and yeah, the only thing I do personally is this little BGA here, right? Because there's a BGA under there, because it's only a mid-grade board. It should be a little bit higher, but we don't have other grades. I take that tiny little BGA. It's not much, but just one BGA. I see little balls underneath, right? But they add up. And there we go. So another thing you could do is remove this little card here, and you've got some gold fingers in there, but most people don't bother. I don't really bother. There's nothing else on there that I want. That's just straight into mid-grade. So there we go. Well, still want to get through to those CDs and just keep processing. But yeah, before I forget to say it again, don't forget, if you're if you like these kind of videos, some people might not like these kind of videos, might think they're a bit boring, or they just drag on a little bit too long. Just let me know, and because it's the first one of this kind, scrap sessions. So if you think I can improve it, or you've got ideas of what I should be doing, or should I talk less or more, or how I should do it, let me know, just to help me out, just so I can get a good grasp on what I should be doing. And because I don't want to just put out videos just for the sake of, you know, putting up dead air online, you know. Anyway, so don't be shy, as I'm saying, just let me know. And you know, maybe after a couple of these videos, I might turn out a few that actually are worthwhile. But you know, you got to try these things. Just going to let out my chickens. It's in the afternoon, so let them have a little bit of a stretch. Got to close the back door. Oh, as I was saying, about the plugs and all that, I've got barrels down the side of the house, at the back of the house here, And as you can see, it's all cables and, you know, new cables in bags, a lot of power supplies, oddball electronic cables, things in packets. So I keep all this, any you know, cables that are worthwhile, and one day I just got to go through the whole lot and just work out what's in here. Yeah, but I certainly like power supplies from vintage laptops and stuff. You know, I get bags, I get operating systems. These are more modern laptop, just stacks and stacks of them. These barrels just sit here. This one here, it's actually, you know, let me just, this is almost full, and all this is cell phone boards and the good quality hard drive, the vintage hard drive boards. Look at all that, so many IC chips and stuff on there. It's really good for gold recovery. A lot of work there to depopulate all this, you know, MLCCs and crystals and yeah, and yeah, as I said, cell phones, you know, heaps of cell phone boards. And so I just keep this for when I actually get into gold recovery. This is going to be one of those things in retirement that I sit down and I just start depopulating all these boards and getting all these gold pins. There's going to be a lot of gold pins and a lot of gold to recover just from that one barrel. All right. Just the back of the chook run. I've just got to close this back door. Saves me coming out later on when it gets dark. Okay. So, there's my nice Tamarillo. Tamarillos are awesome fruit tree. They just they're so prolific. I mean, the season's over now and most of these leaves will drop, but really good survival plant because they produce literally hundreds of fruit, and they're called a tree tomato, and they're so easy to propagate. All you need to do is just cut off a stem, put it in the ground, and you've got a new plant. And so one day when I've got a farm, I'll have a really good supply of these. I might even sell these at a farmer's market, you know. They're not like my ultimate favorite fruit. They're kind of a little bit savory, but they're very sweet. You can use them just like tomatoes. So you can, what I do is I cut them in half and I grill them just like a tomato. So they're like a grilled tomato. They're really nice with steak. Yeah. And yeah, inside it's very sweet, and seeds and all. Very nice. They're sweet and tangy. Really nice. All right. Yeah, and going by this, by my batteries, I'm on my third battery, so the video must be getting long. So maybe also let me know how long these videos should go for, these scrap session videos, because, you know, maybe 1 hour is too long and anything over an hour is just way too long. So yeah, let me know on that too, because you know, I'm trying to make a cross between informative videos and entertaining videos, and so, you know, I'm a scrapper, so I'm not overly experienced in entertaining people, but I know that people that watch videos online have usually got a very short attention span. Usually any video over 5 minutes is too long for most people, so I guess unless you're getting something out of it, then, you know, you're not going to watch if you're bored to death or anything. So, alright, well, this was just that modem that I picked up that was already half broken. Really nothing on it. I mean, there's little BGAs here. You start removing these BGAs, are going to turn it into a low grade board. Going to really lose value in this, you know. So yeah, in this case, because these aluminium heatsink topped BGAs, they're not really that good for gold recovery, these kind of ones, you know. It's these little BGAs here, the nice little memory BGAs that have really got some good value, but you just need so many. I'll get this little card out. And these little cards, they don't go as like your slot cards, you know, with fingers. They're only still only a mid-grade board. So if you do keep, you know, if you are into gold recovery, or you do take your fingers, you know, you can take your fingers off these, even though they're very small and they're not the highest grade gold plating or anything. But you just put these to the gold finger pile, and still a mid-grade board. Right under there, we're going to have a Bga chip, heatsink. Got my chicken here, come to scrap. Yeah. But I guess there's, you know, a lot of subject matter here for videos as I go out street scrapping. Usually every time I go out street scrapping, there's something, just get my chicken. There's always something different and interesting to look at, so, you know, I thought it might be a good idea to do these videos. Just a mid-grade board, and as I said, I'm not going to take these Bga chips off because it's just going to devalue the board. So, well, my PC with all my rubbish is full, so I can put the top back on that, and there you go. So, you know, we've got telephone handsets, a few mice, speakers, a few plugs, DVD scrapped out, little bits of steel, all my screws, all that kind of stuff. All right, there we go. One scrapped out PC full of scrap metal rubbish. Put it out the pile. Another one bites dust. There we go. So they're all current scrapped out PCs and just scrap metal and junk, all ready to go. All of these are all full with little bits and pieces, so they're good weight for the space that they take up. Okay. So I've got 2 boxes left here, mostly cords, more modems again, phones. Some phones are good, some are not so good. Got to scrap all these phones out straight up. Modems and all the floppies and the DVDs that I picked up. So any brand name ones, good vintage ones, I'll put aside, but a lot of these I'll just scrap out. Like this one I'll just scrap out. We'll just have a look at some of these phones. They can be hit and miss. Some are not so good, others can be, you know, really good boards inside, especially you know, your brands like Cisco can be awesome phones, usually a lot bigger. These ones, the Alcatel Lucent, they're okay. I mean, they're still better than your household domestic phones, which don't have much in them at all, and it's just, you know, it's almost not worth scrapping out because you still got a lot of plastic to deal with. And that's, you know, what it's about in the end. When you're scrapping a lot of this stuff, it's one thing to pick it all up, but then you know, you've got to deal with all the rubbish in the end. Okay, so there's one piece of absolute rubbish. It's ABS, so if you can recycle it, obviously do so. And this board, yeah, it's just an average mid-grade board, but you know, this is what I do, and the boards aren't going to just come out of thin air. They've got to come from something. A little speaker, just a bit of wire. Yeah, the only thing with these phones is, you know, it's usually a lot of screws, and so, you know, like if you're looking at value as far as time value versus money, you know, you're putting in a lot of time in this sort of stuff, and you know, your hourly rate sort of drops quite a bit. But if you're scrapping, then that's probably shouldn't be all what it's about, because you know, it's hard to make a living out of scrap just on its own, unless you're lucky to get a lot of PCs from businesses and schools where you can just sell the stuff rather than scrapping. But this kind of scrap, this is, you know, it's mostly hobby. You got to enjoy actually doing this, you know, pulling stuff apart, and you know, if you've got nothing better to do, well then it's worth it. So there you go. Again, nothing I want to take off this board, because it would just downgrade it. Even though there's no real rubbish, as you can see, it's all clean. There's no big chunks of scrap steel, so it's a good value board for you know, for the guys that buy this and recover. You know, you get a few IC chips and, you know, just tiny little components around, but yeah, it's still just a peripheral board or a mid-grade board. I keep saying peripheral board because in America, there's some companies that buy boards, like even Board Sort in the States will buy this kind of board, and they call them peripheral, and we call these mid-grade. What Board Sort calls a board mid-grade is actually just a power board. It's not a mid-grade board at all. And so the green power boards they call mid-grade. That's not the case. It's just a power board, a low-grade power board. This is a mid-grade board, you know, internationally, and and that's it. But in the States, these are generally considered as peripheral boards. So it's the same thing. So when I say mid-grade, if you're in the States, you've got to think peripheral. So for that one little board, now, you know, value-wise, it's only worth 30-40 cents. So, you know, it's not going to change your life. And in the end, you've got a lot of plastic to deal with still, okay? But environmentally, well, we haven't really changed a lot, but at least we've gotten something out of it. And, you know, once this is broken down, there is like toxins in there for the environment. So at least we've got this out, and it's going to, they're going to recover all the metals and deal with the toxins properly, rather than it's sitting in landfill. If this ends up in landfill, well, it was going there anyway. And as I keep saying, until the government can provide us with a recycler that accepts ABS, there's not much we can do with it. So yeah, they're not bad. You know, when it's all free, well, you can't complain. Let's just go for a comparison. This is a real old phone here. It's a landline base, but it's not good enough for me to keep as a vintage collectible. It's just not the right model. And it's probably not really vintage enough, even though it really looks it, because the plastic has gone all orangey. It's not that old, but still, we'll find a hidden screw. We'll just check out the circuit board and see if it was worthwhile. So more plastic, and we're doubling up. Every time we open something like this up, we're doubling it. When you open up a printer, like a bubble jet printer, for the tiny little board you get, like literally 10 cents worth of circuit board, you multiply the plastic by 4 or 5 times, and you create an absolute little shambles. Okay, so far we've just got a low grade board here and very little value. Just get my little magnet. Okay, so probably the best value are these thin plates. They're brass. So we can take these off and throw them into brass. They might even, yeah, no, I'm pretty sure they're brass. It could be stainless, but I doubt it. So there we go, just a low grade board in that part. And one more board here. Okay. This looks a bit more interesting, at least. Okay, so it's got a bit of a heat sink. I don't expect much to be under this heat sink. I'm not even going to bother taking it out. I'm assuming this would be a mid-grade board. There might be a few IC chips under here. It's just like some kind of aluminium shielding. But it just looks too attached to try and yeah, there's a little bit of circuitry under there, but I'm not going to bother. I'll just leave it on, get mid-grade for that one. And this board here, yeah, it's only LED lights, not even worth taking off, so that's just rubbish. So that phone, really not much at all. Very low value, but still, we've got to build them up from somewhere. This chicken, it's for you. Since we've done that vintage phone base, we might as well do this side of it too. Yeah, it's good. They've already taken the battery out. Just want to see what kind of board's under this. Okay, it's the same kind of deal. It's got this shield over the board, so there's not really a lot that we can actually see here. But that's fine. At least it's a decent board that's, you know, the full size of the phone. This wire. Okay, so yeah, there's no standout gold recovery bits or anything. So in this case, once again, I'm just going to leave this shielding on. No point in taking it off. I'm just leaving it as a mid-grade board. So there we go. Phone and base. That's what we got. Well, better than nothing. And these old style CD players, well, these are the only types that I like to scrap out now with the old style pins. When they're only got the SATA pins, I don't bother even opening these up anymore, because it's just such a tiny little board. I do open them up if I get them loose like this, but usually I don't even take them out of PCs. When I scrap out the PC, I prefer to just leave the PC, leave it in. Yeah, well, see, like this is kind of like newer style, old style, because it's only still short. I like the CDs where the board is all the way through. But still, I do keep these. I've got a couple of barrels of these now. I just keep building them up. So one day, I just got distracted there for a bit. I'll be sitting down and I'll be removing all these gold pins out of every one of these old CD cards. So it's going to be a big job one day, you know, but I don't intend to do it when I'm trying to earn a living. This is just going to be my retirement hobby, is to take all these gold pins and one day process everything that I've accumulated over the years of scrapping. I'm not in any hurry to go for my gold recovery. Like some people, they get a handful of gold pins and they're immediately looking for ways to recover that gold. Well, what are they going to get? A quarter of a gram? It's a waste of time. So I always, you know, I recommend to any scrappers that are interested in gold recovery is don't worry about gold recovery until you finish scrapping. When you're sure that you're not going to get any more gold recovery bits, then start going for the gold, you know. Because I just feel that scrappers tend to rush into gold recovery too quickly and without having the knowledge or the proper equipment. I don't think it's a safe thing to do. It's the sort of thing that you want to have you know, a lot of quite decent amount of experience before you start getting into it. But that's just my opinion. Everyone's different, and if that's what you want to do, good. Nice little antenna, bit of brass. Okay, might as well do this phone since it's sitting right here, because I've got to at least get rid of all these phones, deal with the rubbish in one go. So more rubbish, but you know, quite an intense board, even though it's still only mid-grade, you know, so it's but still. Just steel, sometimes could be brass. Just wanted to make sure before I throw it out. All right, so there we go, just a mid-grade board. Again, not a lot. I might as well take off this little crystal since it's sitting right there. It's not going to devalue the mid-grade board much. And yeah, just leave everything else on, nothing spectacular, and it's just on to the next thing. Get some wire, put it straight into my little handy tub. So I try and be as organized as I can. This part here, it's a bit too much rubbish to throw it into scrap steel, so I'll just get out the speaker and this connector. Okay. Rubbish, how's that? And see, this is where plastic gets complicated as far as recycling. It's why recyclers don't want to deal with it, is because it's not all ABS. You know, this one is PS. Okay. This one doesn't even say what it is, you know. And then the next one will be ABS, and then there'll be PPS and RPS and UPS. There's so many different plastics, and they don't mix. When they recycle them, you can't, you know, to get a good product, they can't mix PS with ABS with PPS with something else, you know. You got this sort of latexy kind of everything. It's all different plastics, and like this vintage one, this is very brittle plastic. It's a completely different thing. So, you know, some people might be under the impression that they can just mince all this up and bring out a fresh product. Well, it would just be a mixture of nothing, really. It's, you know, it's not really as easy as it seems. Plastic is very complicated when it comes under the grade of 7 and above, like just other plastic. That's what it's considered. You know, you say you've got your milk bottle plastic and your plastic bag plastic. That's all easy to recycle, and but yeah, and they can actually make money off it, and that's what it's all about. If they can't make money off recycling plastic, they don't do it. So there's never a shortage of these set-top boxes or digital satellite receiver. Yeah. Lots of modems. I mean, as you say, I tend to spot modems out really quickly out in the street. Maybe because I'm the only one that picks them up. You know, the guys that go out and look for computers and stuff, they even pick up some DVDs and stuff like that. A lot of them will just leave modems. But look, for the tiny little box, right, okay, we've got plastic to deal with. But, you know, virtually the whole box is is the board. So, and some dead weight on the board, so it, you know, if you're selling circuit boards, like to me or anyone, mid-grade boards or peripheral boards really add up. Like that is quite decent weight, right? Quite serious weight. It's, you know, it probably weighs half of what a computer motherboard weighs, if not a little bit more, you know. So there's value there. Certainly worth for that little modem that we picked up. Okay, this modem, this was a Cisco. Okay, so don't find many Cisco modems out in the street, but yeah, full of nice goodies. So all I want here again is the crystal on this side and the crystal on this side. So just 2 little crystals to add to my personal collection. I mean, not telling anyone to pick crystals, because you might not have anything to do with them later on. You might not know what to do with them. It's only for silver recovery. It's just a little hobby thing of mine. But I will take this little BGA because it's just a mid-grade board. Yeah, one of the memory BGAs. These are the highest grade BGAs, the ones without the plastic on the base. You know, not the gold corners, just these straight out. And there we go. Mid-grade board, a lot of dead weight. So good for us who's selling boards, because you know, we're getting good money for what isn't really worth much. So if you were to depopulate this, take off the IC chips, what's there for gold recovery, you're probably going to lose, because you're going to be left with steel weight and stuff that's really not worth much. You know, you can pop this cover off to get another crystal, but then you're devaluating because you're removing this piece of steel. You know, so I prefer to keep them on. And for what the crystal is worth, I'd rather keep them on. Well, I think for a first video of this kind, I think I'm just going to leave it there, and for the rest of the day get rid of all this stuff, because I just got a feeling that this video is starting to go on a little bit too long, and yeah, it just might not turn out how I want it. So once again, I know I've asked you a few times in this video already, but because people don't generally watch whole videos all the time, so I'm trying to catch as many of you as I can. Just to don't forget to just let me know what you think of this style of video. So it's when I go out street scrapping, I'm going to come back, empty the van and start scrapping stuff out just from the street scrap days. So let me know if you think that's going to be worthwhile doing, and let me know how long I should go for, and or just whatever you want to let me know. I'm not going to take offense. Now here's a little tricky thing with these modem cards. You got this steel base. Technically you should take the screw off and remove this back base plate, because it's only steel, but people that come and sell me boards, they generally leave them on. Obviously they want to get a little bit more weight. You can get away with it, but you know, preferably if you undone this screw and took off this, because it's only dead weight and it's kind of cheating in a way. So how I prefer is you remove that screw nut, and see, that's just steel. Get rid of that steel plate. You still got a lot of dead weight here, so you're still getting good value, you know, for what it really is. Just have a look under this plate. Okay, so under this plate we've actually got a very nice Bga chip. So, but once again, you've got to kind of, if you're into gold recovery, you've got to weigh up whether it's worth depopulating like a mid-grade board and turning it into a low-grade board, because you remove that main chip and, well, you bring it to me and this will be a low-grade board once you remove that main chip. Alright, so now we've turned this into quite a nice board, and we've still got something under there probably, but you know, these are the two main things that I like, is your Bga chip. Obviously this is the class 2, the second best Bga, with the gold corner. These are really nice. Sometimes they can be spectacular, and I like these memory IC chips, just the little flat ones. I keep these separately. If you sell me these flat ones separately, pay quite a bit more for these than I would IC chip, but still I don't want to take off this Bga chip, but it is a little bit high value for what I'm getting for this board, selling it as a mid-grade. So to make up for it, I'm going to at least get this memory IC chip off. right? So I just scrape down one side, you bring it up and just give it a few wobbles, and there you go. It's only very light. You need a lot to make up a kilo, but hey, you got to start somewhere. And I'll probably just take off this little MLCC, just one decent size MLCC, put that in my own little collection. Okay, so we've still got a mid-grade board here because we haven't removed the main chip. We just took off one of the side memory chips. It's not really noticeable when a buyer looks at it and says, okay, yep, it's still got the main chip. It'll class as a Bga, as a mid-grade. All right, guys. Well, I better keep scrapping in my own sort of time. Got to get this circuit board out. It's just a low grade. So as you can see, it's all green. Looks like it could be a mid-grade. It's not. Even though it's got a few little IC chips and stuff, it's all about this copper. You know, these big copper things and big capacitors and stuff. This board will go as base metal recovery. Okay, so it's still a low grade board. So this is where I recommend you depopulate boards like this and get better value. And yeah. All right. Well, my chair sort of has worked out good. It's quite a comfortable chair to sit on. Perfect for the workbench. It's got a little footstool underneath, a little foot bar, and I'll just keep going. Well, hope that was a bit of fun for you guys. I'm going to keep scrapping, and next video will probably be a street scrap video. We'll get out there and bring back more stuff, and hopefully make some fun videos from street scrapping and some fun videos from my scrap session videos, and yeah, we'll all have a bit of fun. Okay guys, catch you next time.